Hey everyone, thank you again for joining us. My name is John Dupre and I am one of the founders of Revel Woods. And we've been doing this series where we've been talking to experts about how to source these larger ticket items like flooring for your projects. And so the last several episodes, we've all been talking to designers who've been doing this successfully. But I thought today we would go in a special direction, something a little more personal to our industry, and talk a little bit more in depth about the wood flooring industry as a business in its entirety. So to do that, I have with me today one of my very good friends. We've known each other for a long time, actually. But Michael Martin, who is the president and CEO of the National Wood Flooring Association, or NWFA, as all the cool kids call it. So Michael, you are in Chesterfield, Missouri, right? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been in this position? Because we've known each other a while now.
Yeah, you came in and did some video here in our headquarters. I think the second or third week I was here. So, and I've been here just over 9 years, headed into 10.
Wow. And I can tell you firsthand that the association looks much different today than it did when Michael started, and it is way, way, way for the better. Many other trade organizations around the country have looked at the NWFA as a model in many ways, particularly I know in education and certain membership engagement as well. So a lot of that has been under your leadership. So I thank you for doing this with us today and letting our audience get a little bit of an idea of kind of an inside track on what this industry kind of looks like and what some of these opportunities for designers really are. So I guess let me ask you, I'll start off with, if you don't mind, I know you mentioned you've been with this almost 10 years. How did you end up in wood flooring? Because most people like me seem like they have to be born into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that people don't ever really think about is that there's an association for almost everything, and especially in a professional career, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an architect, whether you're a designer, whether you're an electrician, there's a trade association that supports education and advocacy for that particular subgroup. So that's what we are. That's what we do for the wood flooring industry. And prior to coming to NWFA, I was with another trade association that also happened to be here in St. Louis, which is the National Association of Electrical Distributors. So I like to say in my career, I've gone from looking up at the lighting and figuring out who made it to looking down at the flooring and trying to figure out what species it is. So I don't know whether it's better to look up or look down, but it's certainly been a lot of neck pains.
I was just going to say you probably have a very sore neck. But I think both are important. And I know they're both very important to designers as part of that whole canvas. So with the flooring market in the US specifically, I guess we could talk globally, but really the NWFA, while it's the model internationally, you're really only responsible for US and Canada, right? Do you do Mexico?
Well, we have international members, so I like to say that we're North American based, but we're an international association. So we do have members, especially that do installation training and that kind of thing, or if they manufacture a product. We have a lot of European manufacturers as well that look to NWFA if they're trying to get into the domestic U.S. market. But as a marketplace, I would say that we're mostly U.S. and
Canada. Okay, that's actually good to know. I didn't know how many members you had outside of North America.
I think we do our annual trade show. We usually have about 40 different countries represented.
Wow. I did not know that. That's good. That's actually good to know. So I guess then talking specifically about the U.S. market, roughly how big is the flooring market in the U.S. in terms of dollars? And then do you know
Sure.
what percentage of that is hardwood? And I don't know if you want to break that out in terms of residential or commercial or both, or how that works.
Yeah, well, I'll break it out by type. So the total flooring market is about 23.5 billion. Hardwood is about 11% of that, coming in just under 3 billion. Half of that is solid and half of that is engineered. That varies a little bit. Engineered's a little heavier, maybe 51, 52%. Versus solid, but it's been fairly stable that it's half and half in the U.S.
So then when you say solid and engineered, and I know I've had these conversations with designers before, a lot of times they don't see engineered as the same as solid in terms of definition of real wood floors. Now, the association, I remember, had some drama recently and went through basically the initiative to define what a real wood floor is. Do you have that technical definition? I didn't prep you with this one. I don't know if you had that handy.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, well, we lived through trying to define it, and this all came up because there's so many lookalikes for wood, which is, I mean, it's a compliment on one side that people want to look like wood, but it's a detriment on the other when people are mistakenly buying or specifying something that they're not getting the quality that a wood would give them, and therefore that kind of gives wood a bad name to some degree. Because a lot of times when wood fails, it's not a wood product; it's actually in the job not performing. It's something else. So we wanted to define what a wood floor was, which seemed ridiculous in the beginning, and it's really kind of does now too. The fact that we basically we came up with three definitions. So there's solid wood flooring, which obviously is one piece of flooring from top to bottom. Engineered wood flooring, which is all wood, but is made up of different stratas. So you have a layer like this, then you have a layer like this, a layer like this, which is usually 7 to 9 layers underneath a real wood top. And there's even argumentation over how thick that should be to be qualified as real wood. But we left it at, if it's 100% wood from top to bottom, how many plies doesn't matter. It's an engineered wood floor. Now, if you remove that and the substrate becomes something different, so whether it's plastic or some other kind of core, laminate, which is an MDF type product, you get into all of the confusing acronyms of SPC, WPC, all of those different types of what I like to just refer to simply as plastic floors. Those needed a definition too, because we saw a lot of people manufacturing product and calling it something that was either calling it wood or calling it something similar that was very confusing to the marketplace. So the third definition we came up with was an engineered composite, which basically means there's a thin layer of wood on top, usually very thin, wear layer with another type of material, another substrate underneath that. And that can, it's not our job necessarily to say one is good or one is bad. But obviously our marketplace has been using solid and engineered for years. And part of the environmental story that wood has is really on the fact that, solid actually is more, in some studies, proves out to be more sustainable than engineered, because you're not using glues and resins to hold it together. You're not taking multiple species and gluing them together. So, one piece of wood, while it may not seem like it would be, is actually in some cases more sustainable. So anyway, long story short, we know the sustainability story of solid and engineered. We don't know the sustainable story of an imported product that we don't have any idea what goes into the makeup of what I still call a plastic or an MDF core. We don't know what's mixed in there. It's an imported product to the US primarily. There are some plants being built, and for those, I could say we could probably know a lot more about their sustainability story. But the imported product, you really just can't tell.
Interesting. Yeah, and I want to circle back too on some of the life cycle analysis and stuff of wood, because I know if a designer's saying, look, because that comes up a lot.
Sure.
There is a whole performance aspect. In terms of, it's almost self-evident in the sense that wood is a desired look in the space, whether it's real or it's a facsimile of wood, just
Right.
based on the amount of products that look like wood, right? If you could make plastic look like anything and that they've chosen to make it look like wood, therefore wood must be popular. But I know the NWFA did some research recently or in the last couple of years on consumer preferences. And how did that break down for the different categories? So a designer knows going into a project, what their client is going to want.
Well, so we had a research firm do a study for us, and they went out and they talked to architects and designers, and they went out and they talked to consumers. They went out and talked to people who had done home projects in the recent past, and talked to them about their different preferences. And from a flooring perspective, hardwoods are the preferred flooring for 2/3 of American homeowners. So when we asked homeowners, what would you have in your dream home? And 2/3 of them came back and said they would want wood. Now that doesn't mean they want wood in the entire house. They may want tile in the kitchen, or they may want carpet in the bedroom, or that type of thing. But for their more formal and open areas, they really want hardwood. So we know that to be the case. And we also know from some of our smaller studies that longer and wider tend to be the trends that everyone's looking to. Yeah, some of the parquets are getting popular again. The chevron shape and the herringbone tend to be used quite a bit from a design perspective lately.
I've seen that too. A friend of mine runs actually it's a shoe company. He's in the fashion industry. He's a fashion designer, and he's asked us to help him with his showroom in Manhattan. And he specifically requested a chevron pattern. Starting to see that come
Yeah,
back.
it's interesting. What was once old becomes new again.
Yes, yeah. I haven't seen like the parquet come back in like the Boston Celtics floor kind of parquet quite yet, but we'll keep an eye out for it for sure. But it is interesting. I know a lot of times, that it's just visually you can take something that seems kind of mundane and based on the installation pattern, make it add another layer of intrigue to it. But it is, just keep in mind any designers who are speccing something in a herringbone or a chevron, it has to be ordered a very specific way, and the installation cost is a lot higher. So keep that in mind. It's not just like, oh, we'll just swap this out.
Right.
So I guess so hardwood tends to be, and I know we defined it, so solid and engineered both are equally considered hardwood, right? In terms of it's the value it provides in the home. Like there's no advantage, or is there an advantage, I guess, to a solid over an engineered when it comes to like home resale value?
Oh, no, I don't think from a resale perspective. And the other thing that our consumer research unveiled was that consumers, and we'll also talk about this a little bit later when we talk about realtors, but we know that it's perceived to increase the value of the home. Consumers believe that, realtors believe that, and that, for the most part, you can't tell the difference between a solid and an engineered floor unless you're the person who bought it or specified it, if it's a quality engineered product with a good wear layer. So, from that perspective, there are places that you can use engineered that you can't use solid. So if you're on a concrete slab or you're in a basement, certainly it makes more sense to use an engineered product there. Sometimes you can do solid with some special arrangements, but for the most part, on a slab or concrete, you definitely want to use engineered. So, sometimes people, I think, get confused on the quality perspective of that. And if you're buying a good product, you're buying a good product, and either one of those can be a solution depending on the environment that it's going into.
Yeah, whenever anyone asks me, is solid better than engineered? It's always like, well, and it is. It's tough. It's a simple question that requires a complex answer,
Mm-hmm.
and it always is. It depends. But the good news about that is, if you are in a situation where engineered is called for, it doesn't make it an inferior product
Right.
by any means. In fact, I know we sell several engineers that are quite a bit more expensive than any solid offering we would
Yeah.
have,
I would
which
say
is
it's kind of based on your geography. One of the things that engineered, the advancement of engineered, and the reason there's been so much growth in engineered is because it can go into areas that wasn't technically going into. So Florida, Texas, places in the Southeast, places in the West that are, all concrete slab built. Engineered is a much better solution for that because it doesn't move as much as a solid might. Now, when you're in New York or you're in Chicago or you're in the Northeast, from the upper Midwest up to the Northeast, I would say that is predominantly solid because the perception is that solid has been used in so many homes for so many years. And if you're doing a project in a house where you're maybe taking the bedroom and making it match some of the other areas of the home, and you have solid in one area, or you have hardwood in one area, it's typically going to be solid over a basement structure. Most homes that were built had solid wood flooring over a basement structure in the Northeast in particular. So you're usually matching to that. Now that doesn't mean you can't match an engineered, but typically people like to match it as close as possible.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And we do our home market here is a large solid market. I mean, it's starting to change with new builds, but a lot of the remodels have been solids or trying to match at least the species, or whatever it is they're trying to
Right.
do. It's very difficult if you have an old floor to find a new floor that is manufactured with the exact same color that's going to match whatever you
Right.
had. Even a natural probably isn't going to match because of where the wood's sourced and how it's aged. And, it's
Right.
that we get a lot of designers who are like, yeah, they're looking to match this Chinese hand scrape floor they bought in the 60s or something. And it's like, yeah, that's going to be tough. So I guess something that I know we've talked about with our design partners is, since it's more hardwood tends to be more expensive, which is a benefit for the designer if you're making money on the flooring because you're upselling, right? Even if you're taking 10, 15, 20% off of the retail, whatever your price is, 20% of 950 is a lot more money for that project than 20% on 450. But as far as the consumer goes, or the client, since homes are selling for more, you're saying that it is basically more money. The home will sell for more money if it's got wood in it
Correct.
specifically. So in a way, I mean, has anyone done any studies showing how that cost kind of amortizes over time? Because I would think if you
Well,
spent a few dollars more a square foot for wood and the home was worth 10% more, that could be
exactly.
you could make $16,000 on that.
I don't think it's ever a bad investment to go with wood. I mean, this study after study show us that the home value increases when you put hardwood in. It doesn't do the same with any other floor covering. So if you're going to make the investment, spend the money to make your wood flooring be your biggest piece of furniture, because it really is. Your home and your environment around you are so important, and there's so many trends today toward sustainability and just the warmth that a natural product can bring. That's not just wood. That's a design trend, in many different areas. But wood floors obviously can bring that to the whole area, or the whole room, or the whole area that you're doing, the flooring in. And that's the other things that came back to us from our consumer study, which included that not only does it increase the value, but the warmth and the long-term value are really what they're looking at. When people buy on price, they're not necessarily, maybe they're not as committed to being in their house long-term. That's possible. Or I would think for most designers, they're dealing with homeowners that are on the upper echelon of home prices in their area. And so I don't think the investment in hardwood is going to come as a surprise to them. I think it's going to be more expected. And the more that you're able to be an expert about hardwood, the more likely you are to use it and to sell it, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So a couple of points I want to touch on that you brought up there that were good. One's a pretty good transition, but the first is so price obviously affects people who gravitate more towards plastic flooring. Although the pricing on higher end plastic flooring they're almost at parity in some
We're
cases.
seeing, we're seeing in some cases, people paying $7 to $9 a square foot for LVT, when they could be paying, $2 to $3 for a nice strip floor. And I don't know why you would ever want LVT over a nice wood. So, there are some options, and I don't think we do enough as an industry. Our people that are on the front line selling from a retail perspective. If you have both products, it's easy to sell on price. But if you're selling on home investment, and you're selling on the future, and you're selling on the naturalness and how clean it is, how easy it is to clean, all of those things, and the fact that it just really is preferred and it increases your home value. It's not a hard thing to get somebody to go with hardwood over another product, because it's naturally what people want hardwood if they're going to buy something that looks like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing, and that's the second point, that they'll say is performance, that the LVT, or really the
Mhm.
entire faux wood industry, did a really good job selling this concept of it's waterproof, it's bulletproof, it'll make you toast, whatever that is. Is there, I mean, what is the wood industry sort of counter to what somehow wood has this stigma that it's fragile?
Well, I think that's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things that I would say, having been here for 10 years, is that I wouldn't say wood flooring is the first product to go toward innovation, because they have a natural, it's been a hard transition to look at other types, for some of the manufacturers outside of what had normally been produced for the last 100 years. So I don't think we're on the cusp of innovation and technology as much as we could be. And I think that what's happened with the product that's going into the marketplace, advertising itself as waterproof and scratch proof and all of those things, once you get past the top wear layer, none of it's waterproof. So as soon as you move your refrigerator across the floor and you make it scratch, you're gonna be down to the substrate level, and you're gonna have a problem. So with wood, at least it's solid all the way through, or it's in, you've got a good wear layer that can endure that kind of thing. But my point was, I kind of got off track there. My point was that I think that those types of claims in the marketplace have made the wood flooring manufacturers stand up and take notice, and we're starting to see those innovations. We're starting to see water resistant wood, and we're starting to see scratch resistant wood, and we're starting to see new finishes that make the product all the more durable. And that goes along with the durability story. You can refinish a wood floor multiple times if you get a good floor with a good wear layer on it. So you can change with the times. You can change color. You can change that dynamic with wood, which is something you can't do with any other surface.
Right. Now, somebody once told me tile is forever, and that's not a great thing. Because I have tile in my kitchen, and I'm looking to rip it up and put the same wood throughout. I have a home that was redone in the 90s, and it's got that different floor in every room. So it's even
Right.
the tile in the front hall doesn't match the tile in the kitchen, and the wood in the old, what was the dining rooms, now an office, doesn't match. And it was very 90s, right? When you had like every room was different. But I want to put wood throughout the whole thing, but the tile is still in really good shape. So it's
It's just
just
not fake
dated.
tile, because there's such a thing as fake tile too, right? So
Right. It's not fake tile.
fake
It's
stone,
real
fake
tile.
tile. If you're going to put the word fake in it, I don't know why you even want to mess with selling it as a product.
Yeah. Well, and there is a certain level of authenticity. I think that kind of comes with that.
Yeah.
So I know that was one of the other challenges with its durability and fragility. And I know we're selling products that have six-sided moisture resistant coating that are right up there with any resilient product.
Right. I'm proud of the responsiveness that the market has made, and we really are starting to see those innovative products come in. But I think the thing to keep in mind as a professional who's going to maybe specify flooring, no flooring is waterproof short of making a pool.
Right.
Hopefully a pool has a waterproof flooring, and that takes more than just putting concrete there, because concrete can crack and leak. So there have to be treatments. The tile that goes into a pool has to have a certain waterproofing finish put on it to hold the water. So just keep in mind, anything you use, if it gets under the subfloor, if it comes in around the walls, if it's cut into molding, there is a way for water to get in and infiltrate. And what I think is dangerous is for us to think of waterproof flooring as some sort of get out of jail free card, that if you have a major leak in your house, or your ice maker implodes, oh, well, that's fine, we have waterproof flooring. Well, and you let it go, and you haven't taken care of it, it can absolutely get into the subfloor and cause even more damage than if you'd had it repaired right away. So the mold buildup, those types of things that happen underneath the floor that you can't see, are dangerous. So maybe the surface may be as waterproof as it could possibly be. That does not make the subfloor waterproof.
That is a great point, actually. And it's one I don't know that gets said enough. And I know we've done a lot of jobs with designers who were, an appliance leaked, because appliances aren't made the way they used to be made. And they leak apparently all the time, I guess, if you look at our sales numbers. But they wanted to say, well, I want to replace the wood floor that was there with a vinyl, because if this happens again, then I wouldn't have the warping in the floor. But what you just said is a really important and almost insidious point to ignore, that if water gets underneath that floor, whether it's vinyl or wood or tile, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And the subfloor you start getting mold in the subfloor, and then you have no way of even knowing, because your top, even if you have vinyl in there and it doesn't warp, but you have mold growing underneath in the subfloor, not only have you not solved your problem, you've created a substantially larger problem, considering
Well,
how
yeah.
fast that mold can spread.
And think about, the fact that, what do you do when you put a refrigerator in with an ice maker? You cut a hole in the floor and bring it up through the basement typically, or you're running it along the wall underneath the molding. More than likely, there's going to be, if you're running it up through a basement, then you're clearly going to cut into the floor where you're allowing an opening to then permeate through to the other layers. So if there is a leak, there's a straight way right there from your refrigerator going back down into the floor. So I do think that many of our other types of manufacturers have not been as upfront and honest about those claims as they should be. Again, in my opinion, no floor is waterproof, even if it's wood and says it's waterproof. I don't buy into that as long as you cut into the wood somewhere where you're allowing it to get to a subfloor.
Right, and there's no way to really, seal it in a way that prevents any water from getting through. And a lot of those waterproof claims, really, where you'll see the difference, in my experience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, certainly, is you're going to take like a bucket of boiling water, like you were making pasta, and you're going to dump it on your floor, and then you're just going to go on vacation for 10 days or something. And then, yeah, you're probably going to have an issue. But most wood, site finished too, but certainly factory finished wood, if you get it wet, it's designed to get wet. You don't want to soak it, but if it gets some water on it or something spills, you just wipe it up. It's really not that big a deal.
It's really not that big a deal.
Yeah. So on that though, so the other piece that I love about the wood and wood story, is the environmental aspect, because I know, we touched on it a little bit, but that is, due to, this being 2020, and it seems like everything went off the rails. Everyone kind of forgot about the environmental threats that are lurking out there. But
Right.
that, I do think that's really becoming more and more important in the, American consciousness,
Yeah.
certainly. So wood versus other types. I mean, so I know you think, okay, well, is it wrong to cut down a tree, or how environmentally sustainable is wood? But you've actually done the research on this.
Yeah, I mean, if it's domestically sourced, we can't speak for the entire world. I can speak pretty knowledgeably about Europe, as far as the sustainability, but for the most part, most places in the States are growing, 30 to 50% more trees than we're cutting down. So the new growth is there, new trees are going in. There are many environmental organizations that kind of keep a watch on that type of thing. And the home or the landowner, typically in the U.S., most land is owned by individuals. And obviously, if you're a landowner and you have timber on your land, you want to maintain what's there because you're selling those logs off. So it's a part of the cycle is replanting that and pulling and taking more out. I like to think of it, it's just like seed corn or like corn or soybeans. It's just that instead of taking a season to mature and be cut out and be planting following next year, you really on hardwoods have a 70-year gestation period where you plant it and then you don't really harvest it for a lot of time. But it's good to if you do cut it down in the right timing in a farm type of environment, the tree when it's cut is hopefully storing all the carbon. A dead tree releases all of its carbon. So it's much better from a carbon footprint standpoint to cut the tree down while it's viable and the carbon is captured, and when it's turned into furniture or it's turned into flooring, that carbon is captured and it's not escaping back into the environment. So managed forests are really the right solution and what we should be looking at. It's easier in other places of the world. This is just kind of interesting information, off track a little bit. But Canada, for example, a lot of the land is owned by the government. No one lives in 75% of Canada. It's too cold, it's too far north, all of those things. So a lot of that is government land. So it's really, very easy for them to certify to FSC, whereas it's very difficult in the States for independent landowners to certify to FSC in the same way, because there's so many landowners that own so many smaller pieces of land, whereas one piece is really easy to certify that you're FSC certified, because it's such a, if you're government, in the same way in Europe, all of Germany is FSC just because they know from a government standpoint what they're planting and what they're harvesting. So it's different here because of the private stewardship necessary. But that's just an interesting sidebar.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I do know that. I know the way. I don't know about Germany, but I do know that in Canada, we have several suppliers in Canada, and a lot of the land is government land that's leased back
Right.
to private, companies. But it's it's interesting from a harvesting standpoint too, because you're right. I mean, it really is just farming. It's just on a bigger scale. It's cutting down a tree responsibly is the same as harvesting corn for the most part.
Right.
Now I know when there is that financial incentive, obviously, to maintain proper and healthy forests, because as soon as you stop using paper or stop using wood flooring or stop using whatever, there is no incentive to replant once those forests are cut down. And in many cases, that land that's currently forest might go to another industry where they'll just clear cut it and put something else there. So
Right.
there is, not only is it not wrong necessarily to use wood-based products, that incentivizes the growth and maintenance of these forests. And a lot of people don't always know too, like when they harvest these forests in the US and Canada, they don't go in and just chop it all down like they're building a golf course, unless they are building a golf
Right.
course. But if you're harvesting it for wood, specifically, then, they really only cut certain trees out and then let it lightens the canopy, and then the younger trees have a chance to grow for the next 30 years until they go
Right.
back to that
Yeah, I
section.
like to say that wood flooring is the only flooring that can regrow itself.
Right. And doesn't it stay, as far as life cycle analysis, doesn't it stay as flooring longer than it lasts as flooring longer than it takes to replace the product, to replace that tree?
Right. And a large part of the product can go right back to the earth. So whether it's, however it's recycled, it's not it will eventually decay and go away. Whereas a piece of plastic is going to last forever. I mean, we're so worried about the whales and the sea life with straws from McDonald's that we've lost track of the fact that we're putting in plastic flooring at a rate that's growing year over year.
That's designed to be disposable.
It's designed to be disposable and to change it out, as opposed to putting in something that lasts a lifetime or can be good for the next homeowner. All they have to do is refinish it to current standards, So, that's the thing where I think we've missed the boat in telling the story sometimes. So thank you for allowing me to talk a little bit about it, because, we've done life cycle analysis on hardwood solid, hardwoods engineered. We are currently working on an EPD, which, if you're a designer that's, obviously, if you've been involved in the commercial space, there's been a lot more focus on EPDs, environmental product declarations, than there has been in the residential space. And so wood is a little behind in having those things in the market too, because we're not usually specified in commercial projects unless it's a restaurant or a hotel. So in those areas, you might be looking for an FSC certified product for lead points, that type of thing. But in the home, in the residential market, no one's really saying, oh, I want to have something, I have to have something that was grown in America and it's certified to something. No one's really asking for that, because it's not getting you lead points or anything of that nature. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not important. And so we've really kind of missed the boat where all the other floor coverings already have EPDs, environmental product declarations. And I like to think of those as the cereal box of sustainability. If you're looking at a cereal box, you can tell how much fiber is in something, you can tell how much sugar is in something. So if you pull up a box of Cheerios and a box of Fruity Pebbles, you can look at the two labels and tell which one is the better for your body. Well, that's really the way an EPD works for flooring, is you can tell, you pull up the EPD for wood, you can pull up the EPD for laminate or carpet, take a look at those and decide for yourself which one is more environmentally safe. So we know where wood will stack up there. Again, natural product, born from the woods, can go back to the woods. That type of environmental story isn't playing out currently in EPDs because wood hasn't finished there. So we're trying to get that finished up this year and get that rolled out into the marketplace.
Oh, that'd be super helpful. Now, I know now on those EPDs, this is maybe a tech question. I don't know if anyone else will find it interesting, but is transportation being taken into consideration with that, or is it only in the manufacturing? Because I know a huge part of the carbon footprint of any item that you buy ever is in its transportation.
Yes, and that just reminded me of a really interesting story, because let's take lead for example. The closer that your product is sourced to where you're using it qualifies you for more points in that particular schematic, which is interesting because we saw Camp Lejeune, which is a military base, specify bamboo in the sports floor. So in their gymnasium, because they were sold this idea that bamboo is so much more sustainable. Well, this was in, I think I think Lejeune is maybe in Pennsylvania. It's somewhere in that area.
I don't know off the top of my head, so I will not be able to
I can't remember
correct
off
you.
the top of my head either, but.
Welcome to Intermission.
Middle of American hardwood country. So, it's right there. The forests are right around them. It could have been sustained right there, as opposed to coming in a boat all the way from China, putting on a truck, taking to a distributor, then taking to a retailer, then taking to market. So, there's a lot of common sense that goes into sustainability that isn't always what people think, I
Right, you
guess.
don't think about it. I don't know if you ever saw this study, and if you haven't, I'll find it. I'll send it to you. But they did one out of Colorado where they measured the overall carbon footprint of a number of different materials, and they were comparing concrete, which is, as you know, or anyone knows, is very energy intensive to
Mhm.
produce, versus bamboo. But the concrete was sourced locally. So if you looked at just the manufacturing, the bamboo was way more sustainable than the concrete. But when you put it on a bunker fueled container ship and pushed it 7,000 miles over the largest ocean in the world, by the time it got into Colorado, the locally sourced concrete was actually more sustainable as a net than the imported bamboo product. So even just buying something in North America is from manufactured in North America is going to make a massive difference.
Right.
Even if it's still wood or anything like that, if that's really important to you. We are seeing, as you mentioned earlier, some resilient plants now are being stood up in the United States. So I think that'll be exciting for that category to maybe learn a little bit more, like you were saying, about
Right.
what goes into that. So I guess in terms of one of the things I want to touch on that I thought was kind of interesting, you've been involved in some consulting calls with the building and remodeling industry. So right now, we all know the economy's kind of weird, right? Like it's not great, but it's also kind of okay. And it's maybe not as bad for some people, or it's really good even for a few people, but like really, really bad for other people. And so I know that like in our specific industry, though, it does seem like there could be some opportunity. Would you mind talking a little bit about what you've seen from the housing and building market?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that in two steps. First, because we're talking about a fairly new post-COVID shutdown, lockdown type of area. So the first thing is, I think everything depends on geography. If you were in a city that was completely shut down and you couldn't work and you couldn't do something, then your city's economy is drastically different than an economy that was allowed to work or to be considered a trade that could go into construction, or whether your home building was shut down completely or whether it wasn't, made a huge difference in the economy based on geography. So depending on where you are, your story could be completely different depending on your market. That's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, I was on a call last week with 24 builders. I wouldn't call it an earnings call, but it was a consultant call that was set up because obviously they were somebody who sells to builders, doing research with builders on where the marketplace was. And I have to tell you, I've sat on a number of those calls over the year, and I've never heard a more enthusiastic audience of builders. And I think part of that is there's been some pent-up demand on areas where building was shut down and couldn't move forward. So now it's a catch up on that process. So things are coming into the pipeline perhaps quickly because they were stopped and shut down. So we're seeing that work its way through. But what the builders were saying is that they don't have enough inventory schedule to meet the demand, and that we're starting to see people in large cities prefer to move to the suburbs, get away from living on top of each other in a Manhattan or a Philadelphia type situation that's really had a really horrific COVID experience, and looking for that clean air and getting away from living on top of each other into an environment where they have more control over their environment. They have more control about how many people they're going to run into when they go out on the sidewalk and that type of thing. So we're seeing some things now. Whether those are short-term or long-term impacts remains to be seen. And I think part of that depends on whether we have, another round of COVID or whether we're done with COVID. And I don't know, which one of those paths, only time's going to tell us which is true on that. So anyway, but the reality was the builders all over the country, one after another, they were almost embarrassed to talk about how good their business was on new home construction. I think from a remodeling standpoint, people have been in their homes and they've been cooped up for 3 months in a lot of circumstances, looking at what's wrong with their environment. And so they're ready to make some investments. They're ready
Guilty.
to
Yeah.
if you're staring at carpet that's been in your home for 10 years, you obviously want to make a change. Or wall coloring, that paint that's been out of style for 10 years. Now everybody's changing those things that they can. As we've seen the home improvement market, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, their business has boomed exponentially during the time when people have been shut down at home, because they're working on projects and getting things done. And if you're on furlough, it's a perfect time to get some of that stuff done if you're a do-it-yourselfer. But now we're seeing that happen in the pro market as more and more markets open back up and get used to a new normal.
So I know that if this being people are looking to upgrade for the most part, whether they're building or remodeling. And so I just know that if I, as a designer, there's huge economic opportunity by getting more involved in these types of items, and incorporating them into, your offering and what you're doing for your clients. I mean, the demand is there. And now it really seems like in many markets, the demand is there. So that's pretty exciting. It's an exciting time, I think, to be doing what we're doing for sure.
Yeah. Well, I
you
think
and I.
specifically, this is kind of, the silver lining here is people are looking for hypoallergenic product. They're looking for an environmentally sustainable product, something that's responsible, that they're not hurting their environment by putting in their home, or that they're not going to hurt their children or their dogs by having down, on a floor. And that's where we always come back to is what's best for your environment and what's best for the things that matter in your life, which are the other alive things, right? Your children and your dogs, which spend all of their time on the floor. Not to leave out cats; they're very important, but
they don't spend as much time on the floor though.
Yeah, they're up in a tree or wherever.
Right, or climbing on the windows or whatever they do. Typically avoiding me, any house I've ever been in with cats. So exactly. And I think too, when you think about people spending, and obviously if the greater economy tanks and nobody has any money, then this is a moot point. But as long as there are people who are working and have money, predominantly we spend them in America on two things, right? Travel and our homes. And leisure travel, at least, seems like it's off the table for a little while for a lot of people. I do know people are traveling again, and I don't want to discourage anyone from doing that. But it does seem like the big Disney cruise or whatever people were going to take maybe has gotten put off for a little while. So the timing, I know, seems pretty good on that. Now, I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you even have an answer for this, but do you know how the wood flooring sales breaks down through different channels as far as retail or big box or anything like that?
Home centers are about 40% of total sales. So that's just over $1 billion that go through the home centers. Flooring stores, so retail stores, are close behind at 35%. So that's just over $1 billion as well. Then contractors make up another 14% or $500 million, and then direct or OEM and other retail make up the last 6% or 180 million.
So I would say then, as a designer, you're looking at a market in the United States that's about $1 billion that you probably could break into by adding this to your project, depending on how you're sourcing it or how you're going about it. But there's at least $1 billion worth of product moving through a channel that you have direct access to in this. So it really doesn't require a ton of knowledge to get going, right? I mean, work with the right people. That's a shameless plug for me. But
would you mind if I gave you just a couple of stats? And
Please.
This is based on a real estate survey that we did, and then I've also seen this data more recently from the National Association of Home Builders in the study that they put out last year. But the numbers are fairly similar. So just three little bullet points here. 99% of realtors consider homes with hardwood floors easier to sell. 82% of realtors said that homes with hardwood floors sell faster. 90% of realtors said homes with hardwood floors sell for more money, and at least 10% more.
Wow.
So from that perspective, that's enough ammunition if you really love hardwood floors to talk to your customers about loving hardwood floors too, because everybody wants to make a smart decision on their home.
Yeah, well, and it's sort of a win-win in that way too, because it's something that the client is going to get more out of eventually. It's going to be in many ways a safer, cleaner product, higher quality product. And it's an upsell. Like I said, if you're making, if your margin is, you're making 10, 15, 20%, you're going to put more money in your pocket on that project if they go with a $8 or $9 a square foot product than they would have with a $2 or $3 a square foot product. So
right.
It's just from a responsibility standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. If you're armed with the right knowledge and right ammunition with this, there is real, I believe, and know because I've been doing it for a while, there is real money to be made in this. And again, it's a good kind of money where you're actually helping the environment and aiding local economies and domestic manufacturers and things like that. So it's the right kind of money, I guess, and not just, you know, uh, a cash grab, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let me ask you one more question. I'll let you run. So if a designer wanted access to some of the NWFA's resources, and I know there's a lot of not great information out there. I know we were talking offline, and I was saying I did a call with the designers' clients a week ago where they had all this information they pulled off the internet, and somewhere between half and 2/3 of it were actually decent information, but a lot of it was not good information. And they were about to make a very serious, expensive, long-term decision based on bad info. So I know, like everything we do, all of our recommendations, specs, technical recommendations, all of which is through the NWFA's content, because full disclosure, anyone who knows me knows that my father is currently chairman of the board of directors. But so we've had a good relationship with the NWFA for a long time, but you really are the industry standard in this. So if a designer ever wanted to see what are some resources to check if what I'm hearing from my uncle Rick, who took a woodshop class in high school, is this really going to work for this multi-million-dollar home for this client? Is there anything like that they can access?
Well, sure. First of all, they can call us. We have a technical support hotline. Part of what we do is make for sure that architects and designers have the right decisions. We also provide our own contractors or our distributors who are trying to specify the right product in the right place. We provide technical support so that the right decision can be made spot on at the time, and you don't have to go out and research things. You can just call us and we'll help you find the answer. And 90% of the questions that come up, we have an answer. We know the answer, or we can send you the specifications. We recently redid our installation guidelines where they have they have drawings in them, so specification becomes much easier. You can just specify straight out of our guidelines. We have all of those things in PDFs. Those are available to non-members as well as members, or we'll send those to you. We'll look it up for you, whatever we need to send you. So, but in addition to providing the technical support and the environmental studies that we talked about, so the life cycle analysis, if you're in that kind of, you're needing to provide some information to a customer who's really looking for an environmental story, we have that information. But we also really like to build the relationships between local NWFA members and designers. At this point, we have more than 100 NWFA members who can present our CEU presentations for architects and designers. And these are approved by accreditation by AIA and the IDCEC, which allows for credits with ASID. So if you call the NWFA, I'm going to give you a number, so I'll give you a second to write that down. The number is 800-422-4556, or email us at info@nwfa.org. We'll put you in touch with someone in your area or an expert based on your specific need if we can't answer the question or you need somebody right there in your field close to you. You can also go to woodfloors.org and search by zip code at our homeowner site, or you can send a consumer there as well if they're looking for an installer or looking for an inspector on a job that needs some input. But look for an NWFA certified professional. You can't really go wrong because they've got the education behind them to come and do the right install or the right sand and finish the first time. So there's my self-indulgent plug for my own industry.
No, you've been with us for the chunk of the afternoon here. You've earned more than a plug, but it is good, and the resources there are really good, and it is the sort of thing that God forbid, and designers, it's sort of like a matter of time, right? You're caught up in some kind of dispute over something. You want to make sure that you have the best information possible. And so by going with any NWFA guideline, I mean, those are considered really legally, right, the industry standard. So if you had something and you did it by those guidelines, it's going to hold up a lot better if, God forbid, you ever have a situation than, well, my Uncle Rick, who took a woodshop class in high school. And again, nothing wrong with woodshop classes,
right,
or any vocational trade education. But it is nice when when you're talking to your client, or an installer or a contractor or GC or whomever it is you're dealing with, that, look, this information is good. And you don't have to like it, but it's not from me. It's from the association that determines what these standards are.
Yeah, I mean, we love to talk to designers when they call in. You know, it's a matter of just, do they know about us? You know, and so I appreciate this opportunity to really talk to your audience and let them know we're here for you. You know, our entire mission is to make for sure that hardwood floors have a good reputation out in the world, and so we want to make sure the installation gets done right the first time. That's why we educate contractors. That's why we have certification programs. That's why we have an apprenticeship program, so that we can get things done right the first time. Because there's nothing worse for wood flooring than for Linda to have a really bad install, and she has her friends over and tells them that story, because her friends are also people that would be part of the demographic that would be buying wood floors more than likely. And so that type of word of mouth is really bad for an industry. And I'm sure you all, you know, have your own examples of that happening. So we like to do everything we can on the front end to prevent that. So please call us. Let us know what you need. Let us know how we can help you. Let us put you in touch with somebody locally in your market that can assist you. And just let us be your friend.
No, I love that. Well, Michael, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm bummed that we can't hang out in person. Hopefully someday we'll be able to get back together. And I know the NWFA did a wonderful job of the virtual show this year as opposed to our normal expo. Congratulations on that. And
well, you know, that's actually free, and we did that for non-members as well. So if you want to dive a little deeper into wood flooring education, we have some good tracks talking about current designs and things like that at nwfa.org, or go to nwfaexpo.org once you get there, and you'll be able to find more than 30 courses that we put out that might be of use to you if you've got some downtime and you want to do some more education, or just call us and put you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll put the links to all of that in the notes here too. So if anyone needs to just go directly from there, they can do that. So thank you again, Michael. This was awesome. This was really, really cool. I appreciate you taking time out to do this and talk. And also, you know, I always talk about how we're connected in the industry, but I never actually prove it. So I appreciate you showing up here and pretending we're friends.
We are, John.
I know it's like I said, it's been a long time.
As long as your dad's my boss.
It's true for the next year, I guess, until he locks himself in office and declares himself emperor. But now he won't do it. He's way too tired for that. But anyway, so thank you all for joining us. And thank you again to Michael and staff of the NWFA for doing everything you guys are doing. And we will see you next time.